Based was a sitcom that aired from 1999 to 2001 that only had 2 series, or as we call them in the United States, 2 seasons. 14 episodes total, 7 in each series. Incredibly short TV show, if I were to guess. About 6 hours in length. Every episode is around 25 minutes, so you could watch this show in a day, easily, the entire thing. It was created by Jessica Hines and Simon Pegg, as well as all the episodes being written by those two, and it's starring those two as well. And it's directed by, each episode directed by the one and only Edgar Wright. The show follows 2 young adults as the main characters, Daisy and Tim, portrayed by Hines and Pegg respectively. They are both currently kind of in between living situations, both having also broken up with their partners, and a very interesting opening scene. Confusing though as well, like you don't know, it looks like they're talking to each other, but it's revealed that they're talking to their now exes. It's very cool the way it's done, but definitely a little like off-putting at first. Daisy and Tim befriend each other, and then they decide, kind of just out of desperation, to pursue getting this flat that requires couples only. And yeah, like I said, they're just desperate for anything, so they pretend to be a couple to get this flat or apartments, and they do. And so the rest of the series starts, and they have this home now, but they have to, just keep pretending like they're a couple, even though they're just friends. The other main characters in the show include Marcia, who is Daisy and Tim's landlady. Brian and Mike live in the same building as them, and then Twist, who is a good friend of Daisy's. I've talked about Edgar Wright a bit on this channel. I reviewed Last Night in Soho. I loved that movie at the time, and I still love it now. I have actually rewatched it semi-recently, and I still think it's great and kind of underappreciated, and in general, just a huge fan of the guy's movies. His sense of humor I really appreciate, and just personally is very appealing to me, and I also just really admire his ability to blend different genres, but without necessarily copying them. Like Shaun of the Dead was obviously very influenced by movies like Night of the Living Dead or Suspiria, maybe you could say, something like that, but they didn't straight up copy them. He still puts his own twist, his own flavor on them, and just, I tend to like the characters a lot in his films too, and the worlds that he sets up around them. And from what I've heard with this show in particular, is that it's a very accurate capturing of late 90s, early 2000s young adults in London, England. And the way that these characters live their lives and what they do in the show is, from what I've heard, pretty accurate to kind of what it was like at the time in London. And you could say the same thing about the way that the Soho culture is represented in Last Night in Soho, or the city of Toronto in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Just the way he's able to capture these customs in these locations, and the culture that exists within them. And it's so interesting when I rewatch the show now and just consider what Edgar Wright did after the show, which was basically move on to making feature films. And obviously you have like Simon Pegg and Nick Frost are the biggest names in the show, a very iconic duo, I would say, at this point, but even like Jessica Hines or Mark Keep, who plays Brian, or even Michael Smiley, who plays Tyrus, who appears in just a couple episodes. Like, almost all these actors are in Edgar Wright's other films too. So it's just cool to see them all together here in this show, and then appear in his films sporadically throughout the years. That's something I would say to people about the show, like, and trying to get them to watch it. It's like, if you've seen like all of Edgar Wright's movies, or at least most of them, you're going to recognize all the cast. Staying on the topic of things that are, familiar and recognizable in the show, you get pretty much all the same kind of editing that you would expect from an Edgar Wright property. The quick cuts, the, bodies walking across the frame and him using that as a wipe to transition to the next scene, just like this random person walking in front of the camera. I've always just found those edits hilarious. Very good camera work too. I mean, look, I'll be honest, if I am to have any critiques with the show, which I don't have a lot, but it is, definitely a bit of a lower budget for the time, and the cinematography is mediocre. It's not the best looking show visually, not up to par with a lot of other shows at the time. But with that said, the less than great visual aspects of the show are more than made up for with, everything, but especially with the way that the show is directed. And like I said, the camera work, one of the most standout moments to me is when the camera kind of starts to jerk down and to the side. And it's in the first episode. I'll show a little clip here where it kind of mimics the motions of Marcia's daughter running across the room and then running down the stairs.
What's that?
Very cool. I still remember watching that for the first time, and it's just like awesome. Who else does that? Or there's some other funny running gags in the show that would be repeated in later Edgar Wright films, such as that one hilarious moment when Mike just abruptly runs away from Tim after calling him out for hanging out with Sophie too much. If you've seen Hot Fuzz, you'll definitely, understand that reference. So many others too. I could just go on and on. I could make like a 30-minute video talking about all the different repeated jokes throughout the show, the references. That's another thing with the show that I think is very appealing to people. And I want to, with this video, I want to, review it properly, talk about why I like it so much, but then also put people onto it because it's just not that well known, unfortunately. It was big in the UK at the time, but did basically nothing in the US, and it has a bit of a cult following, but still is not that popular. In addition to, if you're an Edgar Wright fan, if you are a nerd, this is the show for you, period. Like Star Wars, Marvel, DC, there's just pop cultural references galore if you're into video games. Just everything Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Evil Dead. So many different references. I almost feel a little embarrassed that I understand a lot of them. I don't actually, but it's like, gosh, I really am a fucking nerd. Holy crap. But yeah, nearly every episode it's like, oh, I understand what that is calling back to. I get that reference. It's like the Captain America meme. Gotta give props. I mentioned it earlier, but Jessica Hines and Simon Pegg, they write all these episodes and they star in the show too. And, it was created by them as well, so they conceived this whole concept and premise and all these characters, and it's very impressive. Like I said, it is a short show, but that's still a lot of work, and I think that they nail the scripts every time. I think every episode is at least good, and I think that their performances as well are very, very good, as is all the acting in the show, from the main characters to the guest roles that aren't in a lot of the show but appear every now and then, or maybe just once as well. Often I like to think of what my favorite character or who my favorite character is in a TV show, or maybe what's my favorite episode, favorite season, different things like that. I like to kind of play with that in my head. I would probably have to say Brian is my favorite character in Spaced. I relate to him in some aspects as he is one of the more introverted and shy characters in the show, but I just love his dedication to his art, if we want to call it that, and that friggin', I've said this word a couple times, but that hilarious gag that they show a couple of times, and I think that alone is really funny that they show it more than once, where he's talking about the different kind of art that he partakes in, watercolors, or there's also, in my opinion, just a beautiful simplicity to this show. The fact that a lot of it does just take place in this one flat that Daisy and Tim live in. There aren't that many characters as well, so you get to spend a lot of time with each character, except maybe Twist as far as the main characters go, but I still think there's an appropriate amount of exposure to her character, I guess. The show is also not just constant laughs, too. There are very good and very effective moments that do get really serious, such as the end of the penultimate episode of the second series and show in general, Disillusion, where, as the title kind of infers, our group of characters kind of fall apart at the end, and as Daisy and Tim, it's revealed that they're not an actual couple, and they kind of have to fight back to get their flats back, which they do in the finale. But The conflicts aren't long-lasting, but they are touched on, and I just really appreciate that because that kind of stuff does happen in real life, and the show doesn't shy away from showing you that. It's a very briskly paced, quick-running show that, in my opinion, doesn't miss a beat, doesn't have a weak episode, and the characters progress naturally as they would over the course of like a year or so that this show takes place, over a year and a half, maybe at most, and starts great, and I think it ends great, too. I do have, a couple of nitpicks to the finale. I do think certain things are rushed there at the end. I don't know how many people are aware who have seen the show, but there is actually a deleted scene from that final episode from the train station where in the episode, Tim just pulls up to where Daisy is sitting at in that contraption little car that he had to pick her up in, whatever, and it shows the time he's there, and then the time when they start walking away, only a minute has passed, so it's kind of sort of played as more of a joke, like he convinces her to come back in just a minute. But there's an alternate way that scene plays out that was deleted from the show that actually is about a 3-minute scene you can find on YouTube if you looked up spaced alternate ending. A scene that was unfortunately scrapped from the show from what I've heard due to audio issues, and they are there when you listen to it. At least I can spot them as someone that edits frequently. Yeah, the sound isn't great. But I honestly don't really care because I think it is a beautiful scene. I think it's beautifully acted, beautifully written, so mature for the characters as well to be saying the things that they are and just honest. And it's so great. I really wish it was in the show. I don't mind the way it plays out, and I don't mind the joke that they go with of him like getting her to come back that quickly. And I love that ending part of the episode with the Staunton Lick song playing and just the montage of all the characters having their happy ending, Daisy and Tim finally being together. It's great, but I do think if this scene were in the final episode, it just would have been a little bit better. All that aside, I think that Spaced is a phenomenal sitcom. I think it's extremely funny, extremely well directed, written, acted, all that stuff. All the song choices are awesome. It has tons of heart as well and just relatable characters, and it's just a great watch too. I haven't actually watched it all in succession, like all 14 episodes in a row, but I bet that would be great to do, to just find a day to lay out on the couch and just watch 6 hours of Space. That would be freaking awesome. I might do that one day. I can't recommend it enough if you've never seen it, and if you're into Edgar Wright, or if you're a big freaking nerd like me, if you're both, even better, check the show out. Also, I feel like this is the one scenario where I feel the most justified in giving this a more of a specific rating rather than a 0.0, 0.5 kind of thing, because there's multiple episodes and multiple series in this case. And so because of that, I'm actually going to rate Spaced a 9.6 out of 10. Easily one of my favorite shows that I've ever seen, in contention for my favorite thing that Edgar Wright's ever done too. I mean, I definitely like this more than several of his movies, honestly, but it might be like just my favorite Edgar Wright thing that he's ever done. I really just love it that much. I also just feel like I have to mention the telepathy gunfight that takes place in the episode Gone, episode 5 of series 2. It's the one where no one speaks. There are no actual real guns being fired at all. It's just all minds in the air, and it's just gold. Truly one of the best and funniest scenes in the whole show. I just felt like I had to mention it because it is so iconic and renowned at this point. I had actually seen that scene before ever watching the entire show, and I just thought, wow, this is unique. This is kind of cool. But I hope you guys enjoyed my review for this show. Technically, this is another classic review. I kind of forgot to say that. But yeah, I'm glad I got to review it because I just love it, and I hope more people get put onto it through this video. If by some chance you have seen Spaced, let me know what you think about it. If you have any favorite characters, favorite episode, favorite series, let me know all of that. I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts. I think both series are great, obviously, but I would pick series 2 personally over series 1. With that said, though, I've said everything that I want to say, so I will sign off now. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out.